3 spine-chilling night shift tales, terrifying secrets exposed from the haunted darkness. The clock ticked slowly, its relentless rhythm echoing through the darkened aisles of Maplewood Convenience, where Sarah spent sleepless nights. Shadows draped over the empty streets like a heavy, suffocating blanket. Once vibrant, the suburb now crumbled under economic strain, leaving whispers of loss clinging to every corner. As she restocked shelves, a frigid shiver crawled up her spine, utterly alone amidst the weight of her isolation. Just a few more hours until she could rush home and hold her 3 little girls, but the suffocating loneliness often felt like a living thing, wrapping around her throat, squeezing tight. Then, the bell above the door jingled, shattering the silence. In walked Brad, the neighborhood's supposed friendly face. In his 40s with a too-easy smile, he often brought snippets of local gossip that briefly kindled warmth in her heart. But tonight, as his eyes glinted with something unsettling, familiarity twisted with an odd smirk, and icy dread settled in her stomach. "Did you hear about the disappearances?" he quipped, leaning against the counter. Her pulse quickened. Reports of local kids vanishing in the night pierced through her mind, bringing with them echoes of her own unforgotten fears. "Just rumors," she replied, heart racing. But his amused chuckle sent a chill down her spine, dismissing her argument without care. The fluorescent lights above her flickered. For a moment, shadows danced ominously along the walls. She strained to see, her breath catching as something, words perhaps, appeared in the corners. "Watch closely," they seemed to whisper. Panic surged, the air thickened, stinging at her lungs. This wasn't a typical night. This wasn't just a conversation, there was an insidious weight to it. Before she could push the darkness aside, anxiety swelled within her. Those whispering messages echoed in her thoughts. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. "Penny for your thoughts," Brad grinned, but it looked more like a wolf's smile now. She shook her head, trying to clear her mind. Just then, the lights went out, plunging her into total darkness. The flickering returned, revealing layers of creeping shadows stretching across the floor towards her. Suddenly, vivid images flooded her vision, visions of children's faces desperate for help, a mix of past and present blurring together. They beckoned her, silently urging her to leave this store, this tragic night behind. Panic rose, clawing at her throat. Brad's jovial facade cracked further, a crackling distortion in the hair-raising atmosphere. She knew now, deep down, he was so much more than just another neighbor. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. I know your past, Sarah." Brad's voice dropped low, edged with malice. The air turned stale, and the freezing chill enveloping her felt more sinister than before. He stepped closer, a predator closing in on its prey. The pieces of his twisted charm unraveled completely, revealing a twisted mind intimately acquainted with her family's heartaches. "You should have kept them closer." The urge to flee struck hard. She bolted, heart pounding against her chest, a desperate rhythm drumming in her ears. Familiar alleyways morphed into a maze, a cruel labyrinth designed to trap her. She could feel his taunting laughter echoing behind her, his presence looming like a shadow too familiar to escape. With each turn, the night deepened, darkness writhing around her, clawing at her heels, hungry for her. Fear. Could she escape the sinister web spun by someone she once thought she could trust? The answer hung thick in the air, and the shadows tightened around her throat. What would it cost her to finally uncover the truth? The air hung thick with dread as Sarah dashed through the narrow alleyways, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Each corner she turned felt like an invitation to despair, shadows rippling and curling like dark tendrils reaching for her. Barking dogs echoed in the distance, a reminder that life pulsed beyond this devil's playground, but all she felt was the pulse of fear thumping in her ears. "Why are you running?" Brad's voice sliced through the fog of her panic, chilling her deeper than the February night. His laughter reverberated, mingled with the rustling leaves above her. It bounced off the brick walls, trapping her in an echo chamber of terror. "You're not done yet, Sarah." Ahead, the streetlight flickered its last gasp, leaving a deepening darkness that swallowed everything whole. She cursed under her breath, her frantic mind calculating escape routes. The convenience store loomed in the distance, her only refuge. Frantic, desperate for solace, she pounded down the sidewalk toward it, aware he was right behind her, gaining ground with every pounding step. Doors flung open as Sarah crashed into the store, the jangling of the bell making her heart leap. She swung the door shut, locking it, while by some miracle of instinct, she stumbled toward the back where the storeroom door hung ajar. She pushed through, her hands trembling as she fumbled for her phone. No signal, only a ghost of battery life remained. A faint rustle invaded the silence, making her freeze. She ducked behind stacks of mismatched crates, trying to still the tremors of her body. Surely he couldn't follow her inside. Those were her last thoughts when the store's emergency lights buzzed to life, casting eerie shadows against the walls. "You think you can hide from me?" Brad's voice was a sinister whisper, as if he felt her presence, tasted her fear. She strained her ears, listening for the sounds of him rifling through the aisles, but there was nothing. Only silence thickening around her, wrapping her in an even tighter shroud of terror. Sarah strained to hear anything: footsteps, whispers, even his breathing, but the stillness was suffocating. Then she saw it. A flicker of movement in the corner near the stacks of soda. Her heart stopped. Was it him? Her breath hitched in her throat. Suddenly, vivid faces surged again in her mind, those children. Their eyes were wide, pleading. They were lost. Was this her fault? Were they trapped like she was now? "Sarah," the voice echoed again, but now it was hauntingly soft, familiar. "Help us." She shook her head, pushing against the crates, but panic clawed at her insides. It was real, the shadows were alive, manipulating her memories. "Get out of my head," she gasped, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. But the shadows surged forward, creating a whirlwind of darkness around her. She stumbled back, falling against the wall, feeling plaster crumble beneath her fingertips. The air chilled further, and she gasped, realizing the truth: it wasn't just Brad. The darkness was alive. The clang of metal against metal echoed, ripping her attention back to the aisles. It came again, closer this time. With mounting dread, she watched the shadows coalesce into a figure. Brad stood at the entrance of the storeroom, a grin of malice stretched across his face, the flickering lights illuminating his chilling expression. "What did you think? I'd let you go so easily?" A voice emerged from the back, soft yet eerily melodic. "The children, they need you, Sarah." Every nerve in her body screamed in panic. Brad's laugh filled the small room again, taunting and twisted. "They're just like you, Sarah, lost. But I can help. All it takes is a little trust." Could she trust a monster? Behind him, shadows shifted again, more figures emerged. Fear curled around her thoughts, squeezing, suffocating. What choice did she have left? In that moment of horrific clarity, she realized she needed to make a choice. Save herself, or save them. She bolted for the exit just as he lunged. As the door swung wide, she didn't look back. What awaited her outside? The unknown? Or something worse? The darkness loomed, chasing her as she stumbled into the night. Behind her, a chilling voice laughed. "You can't escape what you've already lost." What awaited Sarah on the edge of the shadows? What sinister choices lay ahead? The cold air outside wrapped around her like a suffocating shroud, forcing Sarah to shiver as she broke into a sprint once more. The pavement felt unforgiving beneath her feet, each step igniting a fresh wave of panic that coursed through her veins. She could feel Brad's presence like a dark cloud hovering over her. The laugh echoed in her ears, reverberating with a cruel promise of her inevitable doom. With every heartbeat, her mind raced. Should she keep running? There was nowhere safe. The streets were silent, shadows creeping along the buildings, merging into an inky black that seemed alive, writhing and breathing. She glanced over her shoulder, fear pooling in her stomach. Had he followed her? Distant barking filled the night air again, but this time it felt different, a warning? Or a mockery of her situation? She sprinted toward the park, where trees stood like sentinels. Maybe the cover of dense foliage could hide her, shield her from the looming darkness. The path was uneven, roots protruding like gnarled fingers ready to trip her. Sarah. Brad's voice sliced through the air, as sharp as a butcher's knife. You can't hide from me. She stumbled but regained herself, heart pounding like a drum. Her resolve hardened. She ducked behind a thick oak, catching her breath, her back pressed against the rough bark. She closed her eyes as she listened for him. He was close. She could hear the twigs snapping, the scrape of his shoes on the gravel. Please, the soft voice returned, curling around her consciousness, help us. The whispers tugged at her heart, pulling her deeper into despair. With a choked breath, she shook her head, rejecting the phantoms of her past and the guilt that gripped her mind. No more. Not now. Cracking a frantic eye open, she peered around the trunk of the tree. Fear gripped her like a vice when she saw that the park seemed strangely twisted in the dim light. Was it her imagination, or did the branches stretch to reach her, ever so slightly bending in the wind? The shadows danced, swirling around the trees, beckoning with a sinister allure. Choose, Sarah. Brad's voice echoed once again. You don't have to run. You can join us. The pit in her stomach deepened. Join them? What did that even mean? The children? Or those shadows? Suddenly, a loud, jarring noise shattered the night. A horrifying scream pierced through the air, resonating from the direction of the store. It was a primal, guttural sound that twisted her insides, sending a fresh wave of terror crashing over her. What had happened? She blinked hard, the world swirling around her. Did she really have the strength to venture back? Sarah. The call echoed again, this time pleading rather than mocking. The children. Were they crying out for her? Were they in trouble still, or were they already lost? She felt herself teetering on the brink, the contours of her decision blurring. Just a moment, and she could lose herself in the shadows forever. An idea struck her, perhaps if she faced Brad, she could find some kind of answer. She took a steadying breath, clenching her fists. If she had to confront him, she had to be ready. But how to battle this darkness? As she stepped away from the tree, a sudden realization pinched her heart. The shadows weren't just dark, they were alive, feeding on her dread, waiting to consume her whole. Brad was no ordinary foe, he was a part of this darkness, holding the keys to secrets she hadn't yet unveiled. Will she confront the monster that haunted her, or will she succumb to the very shadows once again? The trees loomed overhead, whispering sweet lies and taunts. Every step toward her fate felt like a descent into madness. A chilling voice swirled around her once more, wrapping around her like cold fog. Will you save them, or yourself? And with that final question in her mind, she plunged deeper into the darkness, aware that the very choice she feared was now the only way to escape. What awaited her in the depths, hidden in the churning shadows? What harrowing choices loomed just beyond? A tense silence fell as Sarah stepped deeper into the park, the shadows around her thickening, twisting into shapes that seemed to watch with glowing eyes. She could hear her heartbeat pounding in her ears, a frantic reminder of her descent into this abyss. The chilling air filled her lungs, each breath a struggle against the suffocating weight of dread. Sarah. Brad's voice again, echoing from somewhere within the shadows. It slithered through the trees, curling around her mind until it felt like a vice. Why resist? It's a game we can play together. She pressed her back against the rough bark of another tree, trying to drown out the cacophony of his taunts and the pulsing whispers from the dark. The shadows shivered at the edge of her vision, writhing like something alive. Each rustle seemed to come from behind her, sending jolts of panic surging through her veins. The screams from the store echoed back, melding with the chatter of the shadows. Were they permanently imprisoned? Or worse, had they been consumed? The frantic whispers beckoned her closer, drawing her deeper into their embrace. Would they reveal what had happened? If she faced Brad head-on, would she discover more than just the truth of her own fears? Sarah. Join us. The voices whispered sweetly, but their intent was dark. She grit her teeth, fighting the urge to succumb, to surrender to the pulling tide of despair. There had to be another way, or at least the strength to resist. As she stepped away from the tree, her foot slipped on the damp grass, and she stumbled forward. Instinctively, she reached for the nearest trunk to steady herself. In that moment, she caught a glimpse of a figure moving through the trees, a fleeting silhouette, too thin and twisted, lost among the shadows. It flickered like a candle in a downpour before vanishing again, leaving nothing behind but unease. Did you see that? She whispered to herself, her breath trembling on the cold air. It was a fleeting glimpse of something, someone. If she could find that figure, maybe she could uncover the truth. Maybe it was an ally. Or maybe it was another trap. Look, Sarah. Brad's laughter echoed once more, frantic, yet filled with twisted joy. I've got them. They're waiting for you, but time is running out. She turned in the direction of the voice, adrenaline flooding her senses. What if she could outsmart him? If he thought she was still hiding, perhaps she could find the children, find them before it was too late. With fierce determination, she dashed away from the oak, sprinting toward the heart of the park. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she bolted past trees, their branches clawing at her, as if trying to pull her back into the depths. The deeper she went, the more the shadows shifted, gathering like a storm cloud. Flickers of movement darted at the edges of her sight, but she pressed on, fueled by desperation. Please, she called out into the void. If there's anyone there, help me. The response was silence, and then a faint echo like muffled cries drifting through the darkness. Were they the children? Were they real? Her heart ached at the thought that, despite her fear, they might still be alive, waiting for her somewhere within this waking nightmare. But as she pushed deeper, dread clawed at her, sinking icy fingers into her spine. The shadows parted, revealing an open area bathed in moonlight, yet something was wrong. Shapes began to form, distorted figures twisting and contorting, eyes glinting like nails on a chalkboard. Oh no! What is this? She gasped, stumbling backward as she froze in horror. They weren't just shadows, they were more. They were memories of the children, faces she recognized but twisted and ravaged, mouths wide in silent screams. Help us, Sarah, they moaned, their cries an agonizing melody that danced on the chill night air. She clamped her hands over her ears, shaking her head, but their voices burrowed into her mind. Panic surged again, threatening to consume her. Did they want her to save them, or to join them? The moon above dimmed, and darkness surged towards her like a tidal wave. The figures lunged forward, breathlessly reaching out with ghostly fingers. As she barely avoided them, the weight of her decisions clawed at her. What did she truly want? The choice she feared was here, inescapable. Could she uncover the path back to salvation? Or was she destined to be just another whisper among the shadows? With her heart racing, she made her decision. What lay ahead in that darkness would determine everything. Her next steps could mean freedom or entrapment forever. But as she darted forward, the figures surged again, and the shadows shifted ominously. She felt the suffocating breath of the darkness at her back. Would she find the answers, or would the night consume her whole? The darkness engulfed Sarah as she pressed forward, darting between the grotesque shapes that shuddered and writhed in the moonlight. Her breath came in ragged gasps, the chill biting at her skin. Every heartbeat throbbed like a drum, drowning out the whispering shadows that pressed ever closer, urging her to give in to despair. "Help us!" the children's voices cried again, echoing through the air like a grim symphony. The twisted faces loomed in her mind, each one a mirror reflecting a horror she could not fathom. She felt sweat trickle down her back, mingling with the cold tension that gripped her heart. "No!" she shouted, more to herself than to the echoes surrounding her. "I want to let you take me." Rushing through the clearing, she stumbled upon a weathered bench, its surface splintered and chipped. Desperate for a moment to gather her thoughts, she threw herself onto it, expecting to sink into its rough texture and draw strength from the earth beneath. But the shadows danced closer, pulling at her limbs, begging her to stay still, to accept their fate. In that moment, Sarah's mind raced. What if she could confront Brad? This had to be his doing, his orchestrated nightmare, a trap set to ensnare her in guilt and fear. She clenched her fists, determination battling against the creeping fear that threatened to drown her whole. Rising from the bench, she took a few cautious steps, scanning the darkness for any sign of him. "Brad! Show yourself!" Her voice cracked, but the rage propelled her forward. For a heartbeat, the park seemed to hold its breath. Shadows lingered with an ominous stillness, and then an echo of laughter. Real, crisp, taunting. "Oh, Sarah, you're getting warmer." That voice twisted her insides. Anxiety flared, stinging her like a live wire. She forced her limbs to move, bolting in the direction of the laughter. Ghostly fingers reached out from the shadows, brushing her skin, a reminder of their tortured existence. She could almost feel the icy touch of the children's hands trying to pull her back, their pain piercing her resolve. "Sarah!" Their moan was a haunting cacophony. The desperation wrapped around her tightly, urging her to listen, urging her to give in. "No!" She screamed again, shaking her head to disperse the sound. As her feet pounded the earth beneath her, she realized there had to be a breaking point. A time to fight back. The laughter rang out once more, chilling her to the core. "This is just the beginning. You think you can save them? You think you can escape?" But something had changed within her. The crushing weight of hopelessness began to lift, replaced by a flicker of defiance. It was now or never. Drawing in a deep breath, she shouted back, "I will find a way to save them, you monster." With newfound resolve, she turned to a darker part of the park, where the shadows seemed deeper and more welcoming. Perhaps there she would find what she needed: a strategy, a way through the veil of madness. As she stepped into the darkness, the air changed, damp and heavy with an unfamiliar urgency. The laughter faded into whispers, but the whispers grew more frantic, overwhelming her thoughts, pushing her towards something unseen. The path twisted and wrapped around her like a serpent, and with every step she took, the pressure mounted. Then she saw it, a flicker of light in the distance, small but bright amidst the smothering shade. "What?" she whispered. Was it hope? Or was it another trap? The children's voices faded, replaced with a sinister glee as shadows converged behind her, flooding the space. She turned back, teeth clenched, heart quickening. "Sarah! Don't leave!" they wailed. But the light pulsed, vibrant against the darkness. She faced the light and bolted towards it, driven by pure instinct. But was it truly a way out, or the next step into Brad's perilous game? With uncertainty clawing at her heels, she rushed forward. Would she break free or find herself trapped in a more nightmarish realm? And then, as she reached the threshold, the ground beneath her trembled. What awaited her inside that glowing haze could very well change everything. Would she emerge a savior or a lost soul? The choice loomed as the shadows lunged again, closing in fast. As Sarah launched herself toward the flickering light, a surge of trepidation mixed with the pulse of hope in her veins. The shadows roared in frustration, stretching their dark forms like starving beasts at her back. She could feel their icy breath brushing against her neck, whispering anguish and despair into her ear, urging her to turn back. But the light called her, bright and inviting. It wrapped around her like a warm embrace, drawing her in, promising safety or perhaps, the final snare. With every step, the world behind her faded twisted trees, gnarled roots pulling at her ankles, and the wails of lost children echoed as muffled whispers. It was as if she was leaving behind the very essence of her nightmares. Suddenly, the ground quaked violently, and she stumbled, catching herself just before hitting the damp earth. With gritted teeth, she pushed forward again, reaching the threshold of the light. The moment she crossed in, she was met with an overwhelming rush of warmth, and the shadows retreated hesitantly, as if burned by the glow. The landscape transformed into a surreal dimension. Instead of a park, she found herself standing in a small, dilapidated room, the walls crumbling and stained with darkness. Flickering candles lined the edges, casting eerie shadows that danced upon the walls like macabre figures ready to pounce. A heavy air pressed down on her, thick with a musty scent, as if she had stepped into the essence of forgotten stories. "Welcome, Sarah," a voice coiled around her, soft yet deeply sinister. She spun around to find a figure cloaked in shadows, sitting in a threadbare armchair placed directly beneath the flickering gaze of a shattered stained-glass window. The figure smirked, its features hidden but every bit malicious. "You've come seeking what lies beyond. Do you wish to learn the truth, or search for a way to save them? Is it you?" she demanded, her voice quavering. "Are you Brad? Brad?" The figure chuckled, a raspy sound laced with contempt. "No, my dear. But you're closer than you realize. This place is filled with secrets, dark truths you've long buried. Do you really think you can save them, or are you simply feeding your own guilt?" With every word, each accusation twisted and turned in her stomach. Shadows crept closer, forming vague, familiar shapes, children's silhouettes, hovering like unwelcome memories. Panic surged through her again, clawing at her chest, pushing her toward the truth she so desperately sought to avoid. "What do you know about the children?" she gasped, fists clenching at her sides. "They are lost, just like you. The difference is, they accepted it." The figure leaned forward, the candlelight illuminating parts of its face, a grotesque parody of humanity. "They live in this realm now. They fester in fear and pain, waiting for a savior who may never come." A jolt of fury sparked within her. "I'm not giving up on them. I can save them. I will find a way. Can you, Sarah?" The voice dripped with mockery. "What are you willing to sacrifice to bring them back? What pieces of your soul are you prepared to barter?" As the shadows shifted around her, the weight of her past came crashing hard. The children's faces loomed again, and their cries morphed into anguished howls. The whispers swelled into a cacophony, clawing through her thoughts, mixing guilt with determination. "I will do whatever it takes," she shouted, her voice echoing in the dim room. "I refuse to leave them behind." Suddenly, the room began to sway, the walls closing in as the shadows thickened. The figure's laughter enveloped her as the candle flames flickered wildly and the shadows lunged forward. In that moment, fear burst anew, igniting a primal instinct to fight or flee. As she stood at the brink of desperation, a bright flash erupted, filling the room with blinding light. "Remember, Sarah," the figure's voice lingered as the shadows crushed in around her. "Light and darkness are intertwined. Your fight has just begun." With the echoes of its words pulsing in her mind, and the world dissolving around her, she felt herself pulled away from the room, spinning into nothingness. What awaited her on the other side? Was it salvation, or more nightmares lurking in the shadows? The moment after the blinding light faded, Sarah inhaled sharply, her heart racing like a caged animal. She didn't know where she was. The ground beneath her felt alive, trembling slightly with each pulse. Fear gripped her throat, making it hard to breathe. The landscape around her had morphed once again. She stood in what seemed like a hellish carnival, vibrant colors muted by an oppressive darkness. Flickering lights dotted the scene, casting unsettling shadows that twisted and contorted like mocking spirits. The laughter of children rang out, sweet yet tinged with a dismal edge that sent chills down her spine. "Sarah," the voice called out, echoing from somewhere deep within the chaos. It was hauntingly familiar but twisted, distorted like a broken record, echoing both hope and despair. "Brad?" She dared to whisper, that name laced with desperation. She strained her eyes, scanning the dimly lit carnival stalls, half expecting to find him waiting there, a beacon amidst the twisted horror. The laughter morphed into faint screams, each one piercing through the intensely thick air. Shadows danced at the corners, pulling her gaze toward a dilapidated carousel. The painted horses glimmered, their expressions frozen in time, gleeful yet grotesque, eyes dark and unseeing. Her gut twisted at the sight. "Come play with us." A shrill voice chimed from the carousel. It was a little girl, her face shrouded in shadow, a stark contrast to the cheerful voice. She wore a colorful dress that looked as if it had been spun from dreams turned nightmares. "Get away from there." Sarah felt a wild surge of protective instinct. The child's invitation felt like a snare, one designed to lure her closer to doom. She stumbled backward, her pulse quickening. But the child beckoned again, her finger extended, pointing toward a door behind the carousel. "This way. You can help us." Sarah's instincts warred within her. The moment felt charged, electric with danger. Something deep inside her pushed to stay away, while another part yearned to save. "Help? You want help?" "Yes. We've waited for so long." The girl's eyes sparkled with a false light. "You can bring us back." No, the ground shook once more beneath Sarah's feet. The whispers of countless voices clawed at her mind. I can't trust you." The girl's smile twitched, morphing into a sneer. "Then join us, like the others." The carousel began to spin, faster and faster, the children's laughter blending with the screams. Sarah stumbled, gripping the closest support, a rusty post adorned with tattered ribbons. Darkness curled around her, like a living entity desperate to drag her under. The reality of her situation crashed in. This was no mere nightmare, it was a trap. She turned, ready to run, but the shadows surged, stretching fingers of darkness to her, wrapping around her ankles. Panic surged as she fought against the binding fog of despair. "Let me go!" she screamed, her heart pounding violently in her chest. The carousel groaned, the music from its chipped, broken calliope echoing in her ears, striking a melancholy chord. "You can't escape, Sarah. We're all here with you now," the girl hissed, her form wavering, becoming part of the shifting shadows. With a determined push, Sarah lunged toward the door, where flickering light beckoned once again. But instead of safety, a pit of dread awaited. She could feel the heat radiating, pulsing like the rage of trapped spirits within. As she flung the door open, she glimpsed visions of children lost, twisted, and that same hollow laughter echoing. Was she diving into the depths of despair or stepping closer to finding Brad? In that moment, the cacophony lifted, and silence fell. Shadows hung low, waiting like hungry beasts. The air grew still, thick enough to taste as the door began to slowly close behind her. A decision loomed before her: confront the gaping maw of darkness behind her or confront the uncertain path ahead. The weight of their eyes bore down heavily, the pressure of their silent pleas urging her toward the unknown as the door creaked shut. Sarah took a deep breath and stepped forward, understanding that whatever lay ahead would demand everything she had to give or risk becoming one of the lost. But what awaited her in that darkness? And would she truly find the way to save them all, or would she lose everything in the process? The light from the door flickered, spilling a cold glow onto the scene. Sarah hesitated, her instincts flaring a warning, but she pressed onward. The air inside felt heavier, suffused with an unseen malice that clung to her skin like a shroud. A winding path unfolded, lined with crumbling walls and lined with faded posters depicting joyful children, their smiles too wide, their eyes empty. The cheerful promises of simpler times felt like a mockery now. As she walked deeper into the corridor, the laughter from the carnival faded away, replaced by a bone-chilling silence that held only the echo of her own heartbeat. "Brad?" she called out, her voice trembling at the edges. The walls seemed to breathe around her, each exhale filled with decay and void. Any answer came not from her missing friend, but from the shadows, whispering her name back to her, each iteration a taunt that sent tremors through her body. She turned the corner, and ahead lay a room, the door ajar. Pushing it open, Sarah found a gathering of children huddled together, their faces pale, eyes wide and reflective, mirroring a fear she knew too well. They looked up at her, and in that moment, every instinct screamed at her to turn back. "Help us!" they chorused, their voices blending into one haunting lament. Their hands reached out, beckoning her closer. The warmth of her body felt strangely out of place amongst their icy presence. Each child wore clothes that looked too big, like ghosts of lost innocence, draped on frames that could barely hold them. "What happened to you?" Sarah whispered, the question barely escaping her lips. "Trapped here," the chorus replied, one voice splintering from the group. "Not everyone can leave, only the brave." A chill wrapped around Sarah's thoughts as she backed away, uncertainty spiraling in her stomach. She felt a tug at her arm, a firm and desperate grip. It was the girl from the carousel, her twisted smile now replaced by a look of concern that was all wrong. "Don't listen to them. They want you to stay, forever," she hissed, her eyes narrowing. "You can break the cycle. You have to find the truth." "The truth?" Sarah echoed, confusion battling her own fear. The shadows pressed closer, a palpable menace swirling around her. The room pulsated, and at that moment, she spotted a faded door behind the children, heavy with darkness but always slightly ajar, like a mouth just waiting to swallow her whole. Only through the darkness, the girl continued, her voice transforming into an unsettling melody. "You must face what comes next." The kids began to chant, their voices overlapping in a chorus that crescendoed into an agonizing hum, urging Sarah forward. The light flickered again, stuttering as if in fear. Torn by dread yet pushed by a flicker of hope, Sarah turned toward the hidden door. She could feel the heat radiating again, swirling from the cracks at its edges, the pulse quickening like a heartbeat of something alive. The other children's eyes widened in terror, their earlier facade dropping. "No!" they cried out, the once sweet invitation now morphing into sinister howls. As Sarah grabbed the doorknob, the screams intensified, shaking the very fabric of the air around her. "You can't, we won't let you." With frantic determination pulsating in her veins, she twisted the knob and flung the door open, stepping into the swirling darkness. And then nothing. She was ensnared in a featureless void, consumed by weighty silence. No laughter, no screams, only an abyss that pulsed with the dread of a million souls lost. What was this place? Was she too late? Or had she stepped into the shadows that threatened to obliterate everything, including her memories of Brad? As the door slammed shut behind her, the echo of her losses faded like whispers in the wind. The darkness beckoned, promising answers but threatening to plunge her further into despair. And even as she took a cautious step deeper, a voice broke through, softer yet filled with a chilling certainty. "Welcome home, Sarah." What awaited her in the ever-deepening shadows? What horrifying truth remained around the corner, her salvation or an ultimate betrayal? The void greedily swallowed her, cold and unyielding. For a moment, Sarah could only feel the overwhelming stillness enveloping her. Then, a low hum whirred to life somewhere in the darkness, an almost mechanical sound that scraped against her nerves. "Who's there?" she called out, but her voice felt small and frail, swallowed by the abyss. To her left, shadows shifted, coiling like smoke around a potential threat. She leaned in, straining her eyes, longing for even a flicker of light. Instead, she was met with the suffocating weight of silence. That wasn't enough to deter her. Each breath ignited a flicker of defiance in her chest. Just then, the hum staggered, distorting into something more horrifying. It morphed into whispers, 1,000 voices bleeding together in a macabre symphony. "Sarah, come closer," her heart hammered. Those voices, concurrent yet individual, bore down on her like a swarm of locusts. Panic flared within her. She stumbled backward, her instincts urging her to flee, but there was nowhere to go. The abyss was endless, a dark sea wreathed in fear. "Help us!" One voice cried out, suddenly distinct amid the chaos. "Forever lost," another echoed, sorrow lacing the syllables. She felt a pull in her gut, something tethering her to the voices. Each chant of despair felt laced with desperation and despair. "No! I can't help!" she gasped, the words harsh on her trembling lips. The entire emptiness seemed to shake with their lament, the pressure building around her in layers, smothering. But from the undulating shadows, a figure emerged, indiscernible at first, but then it solidified into the outline of a child. The girl from the carousel, her face twisted in a grimace of anguish. "You must find a way," she urged, her voice cutting through the fog like glass shattering in the silence. "You can't stay here. I need to find Brad." Sarah shouted, as if the urgency of her words could drown out the threats that pressed closer. "Brad?" The girl's eyes widened, the emotion flickering like a candle threatened by the wind. "Be careful with his name. You'll awaken the guardian. He doesn't like to be disturbed." "Guardian?" The term echoed in her mind like a sinner's bell toll. Then, without warning, the hum crescendoed into a horrific cacophony. Sarah felt the floor dropping slightly beneath her feet. It was as if the abyss itself plunged deeper into torment. The whispers morphed into howls as darkness coalesced, revealing twisted, gnarled shapes rising from the shadows. "Find the truth," the girl shouted, her expression shifting from concern to terror. "You must turn back. Only the brave can survive." But Sarah remained rooted in fear and confusion. A sense of clarity pierced through the swirling chaos. With every ounce of courage she could muster, she whispered, "I will break the cycle." The shadows recoiled, as if her words changed the very fabric of the void. Tempestuous winds spiraled around her, pushing Sarah forward as her heart raced in defiance. A flash of silver caught her eye, a door, barely visible yet glowing faintly at the end of the hall that seemed to stretch infinitely. Driven by frantic instinct, she moved toward it. "Please, Brad," she cried, her breath coming in ragged gasps. With each step, the voices grew louder, twisting into screams of warning. "You'll regret this." Howls erupted, echoing loudly in the suffocating darkness, shaking her resolve as the ground quaked. But all else faded away as she reached for the door, the handle cold against her palm. Could she trust what lay behind it? Would it be freedom or a deeper descent into terror? And then, the whispers turned into a single voice, rich with malice. "You were warned, Sarah." Just as she twisted the handle, the air around her shattered like glass, drawing her closer to what lay behind. What awaited her in the darkness? Was it Brad, or something else entirely, waiting to consume her? In that moment, uncertainty gripped her. What if the truth was more terrifying than the darkness itself? She pushed the door open and stepped through, praying she hadn't sealed her own doom. What horror lay ahead? Would she find the answers she desperately sought, or would she face the guardian and all its sinister wrath? The door swung open with a creak that echoed through the shadows. Sarah stepped into the room, her heart pounding like thunder in her ears. As the chill of the void faded behind her, she found herself in a dimly lit space crammed with relics of the past. Old toys and forgotten belongings lay scattered about, each one telling a story of lost joy. But the real horror lay deeper, a palpable sense of dread wrapped around her like a thick fog. Her gaze darted around the room, searching for any sign of hope, any hint of Brad, but the shadows writhed with a life of their own, threatening to swallow her whole. "Brad?" She called out again, desperation tinging her voice. "Where are you?" A sudden silence enveloped her, stretching and contorting until it snapped back with a chilling force. Then, like a ghost emerging from the dim corners of her fears, Brad appeared. His face wore an unsettling smile, but his eyes held sorrow. "You shouldn't have come here, Sarah." With every ounce of instinct, she stepped back, dread unfurling in her stomach like a dark flower. "I came to save you. To save them." Brad shook his head slowly, an unsettling calm emanating from him. "You think you can save them? Here, everyone is caught between choices and darkness. The Guardian feeds on fear, and your arrival has stirred something terrible." A deep, guttural growl reverberated from nowhere, forcing her to glance toward the far wall, where dark tendrils writhed like living shadows. They pulsated as if something was struggling to break free within them. Panic clawed at her throat, tightening like a noose. "I'll fight. We can fight together," she shouted, her voice trembling in this ghostly atmosphere. "Fighting won't help." Brad stepped closer, eyes narrowing as he seemed to weigh his words. "You must confront him. Only then can you find the truth or become one of the lost." "What truth?" she demanded, desperation fueling her defiance. "I came for you. All of you." In an instant, everything fell silent, the shadows freezing to listen as if holding their collective breath. Brad's smile faded, his face growing serious. "The truth is the darkness is a reflection of our fears. It thrives in our very essence. It's why the children are trapped, why I might never leave, why you've been caught in this web." The wall of shadows shifted again, drawing closer. Her breath caught, the dawning realization hitting her like a freight train. "I didn't just come here for you, did I? It's about my own fear. I'm running from it. You're here to find a way past it. You must make a choice." As the shadows twisted and swirled, she felt their icy fingers creeping closer, pulling at her like quicksand. "I want to let you take me. I want to succumb. Then you must confront the Guardian." Brad stepped back, almost as if ready to shrink into the shadows. "Face him, unravel the truth. It's your only way through." "Where is he?" Sarah's voice turned fierce, fueled by determination. "I will face him. Follow the darkness," he said, eyes flickering. "Only then will you discover the depths of what you fear, but it's not just him. It's the past you carry, the echoes of guilt and loss." With one last glance at Brad, Sarah steeled herself. Drawing on the resolve of every mother's love, she turned toward the undulating shadows. With each step into the gloom, the air thickened, crackling with tension. She felt the shadows clutch at her heels, whispering doubts, yet she pushed deeper into their embrace, her heart a drum echoing hope and fear. A massive figure loomed before her, half-formed from shadows, its outline shifting and contorting with intention. "Welcome, Sarah," it growled, a rumbling sound that vibrated through the air. Instinctively, she knew this was the Guardian, the very heart of her fears manifested. "What do you want?" she shouted, defiance rising within her. "Your fear is what sustains me," it hissed back, voice rich with disgust. "What you seek lies embedded in the dark depths of your soul. What do you truly desire, flesh and blood?" "I want to save them. I want to reclaim what has been lost." The desperation in her voice caught the Guardian off guard, its monstrous visage flickering momentarily. "Then you must choose, embrace the shadows and join them, or cast light upon your fears." The Guardian leaned closer, its breath icy against her skin. "I choose to fight," she exclaimed, resolve surging through her veins. "I will not be a prisoner of the darkness. With those words radiating power, she envisioned the love for her children taking form, illuminating the shadows. A light burst forth from within her, piercing through the dark. The shadows writhed in agony, their pained howls echoing in the void. All around her, memories of the children flooded in, swirling and dancing together, filling the dark with vibrancy and warmth rather than cold loss. The guardian recoiled, its form dissolving into shrieks of frustration. You cannot rid yourself of me. I am part of what you fear. But I am also love, the light of every moment I hold dear. She shouted back, her voice resonating in the depths of her being. You have no power over me. The light swelled, cascading through the shadows until they began to vanish, breaking apart like fragments of bad dreams. The guardian's anguished screams filled the air as it retreated, its grip relinquished. One final pulse of brilliant light burst forth, and in an explosion of clarity, Sarah found herself standing in the abandoned store where it all began. The air was still, yet charged with a sense of relief. The bell rang softly above her as she stepped outside into the dawn light. The shadows that had haunted her nights were gone, leaving a sense of freedom in their wake. And as she took a deep breath, a heavy weight lifted from her heart. She could feel her children somewhere beyond the darkness, they were safe now. The world ahead felt fresh, bright, new, each ray of sunlight cutting through the remnants of her fears. She stepped forward, knowing she had faced the abyss and emerged transformed. And as she walked on, Brad's voice came softly in her mind. You chose, Sarah. You rewrote your story. In that moment, she understood the night's terror would no longer haunt her. She carried each memory, each whisper of hope into the light. Was this the end? Or the beginning of a newfound journey? Only time would tell. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss these exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and support the channel. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans know how vital this support is. Let's keep the story alive.